How can we be assured of God's presence? First, approach God in an attitude of worship. We often use an acronym ACTS, ACTS, to help us understand the various parts of prayer. A stands for adoration, C for confession, T for thanksgiving, and S for supplication or making requests. Those are the four basic ways of approaching God in prayer, and it is a pretty good way to remember them. If you want to know God's presence, begin with worship. Worship is one of the key stops that you make again and again in the journey from doubt to faith. Secondly, remember God's mighty deeds of the past. This is what takes up the bulk of Habakkuk's prayer in chapter 3. Verses 3 to 15 describe what is called theophany, a word that literally means an appearance of God. Of course, God cannot be seen with human eye. 1 Timothy 6 verse 16 says that God lives in unapproachable light, whom no one has seen or can see. God told Moses in Exodus 33 verse 20, "No one may see me and live." So in a theophany, people do not actually see God, but they see visible marks of his presence. On Mount Sinai, when God gave the Ten Commandments, there was thunder and lightning and fire and a thick smoke and a great earthquake and the sound of a trumpet that was growing louder and louder and louder. The people of Israel did not actually see God that day, but I can guarantee you no one was asking, "Is God there?" God was only too clearly present among them. Habakkuk 3 presents a remarkable theophany of God in highly visual and poetic language. But unlike Mount Sinai, which was an actual theophany that took place in history, Habakkuk's psalm uses the language of theophany to proclaim to the people of Israel that yes, God is indeed there. And Habakkuk does this by remembering God's mighty deeds of the past. As Habakkuk reflects on God's deeds in the past, he emphasizes 2 points in particular. First of all, God conquers all enemies in the past. On one level, this psalm is a picture of God coming with great power and might and destroying all the enemies that stand against him. The psalm is full of imagery from the surrounding nations at that time. The nations tended to associate their gods with various aspects of nature, and so as God comes striding up from the desert in the south, he conquers all forces of nature and causes them to do his bidding. God's visible appearance is pictured as a great thunderstorm. It is a glimpse of God's might and power. Let's unpack some of the imagery that Habakkuk will uses in verses 3 and 4. The verses 3 and 4 says, God came from Teman, the Holy One from Mount Paran. His glory covered the heavens, and his praise filled the earth. His splendor was like the sunrise. Rays flashed from his hand where his power was hidden. Teman was in the region to the south of Israel, in the country of Edom. Mount Paran was located in the wilderness area between Edom and Mount Sinai. And so God's coming is compared to a thunderstorm approaching Israel from the south. His brightness lights up the sky. Rays of lightning flash from his hands as from the deep thunderclouds, yet the full extent of God's power remains hidden. This is our God, our all powerful God. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. Can't you trust him? Be blessed.